But speaking with one county attorney here, she tells me so far there's been zero cooperation from the federal government.
And we've also been seeing criticism of ICE beyond the United States. Italian officials have expressed anger that the U.S. Department of Homeland Security will send ICE agents to the upcoming Winter Olympics in Italy. The mayor of Milan, one of the two cities where the games are taking place, said that ICE officers are not welcome. A DHS official tells the BBC that ICE does not conduct immigration enforcement in foreign countries and is supporting diplomatic security under Italian authority. Well, let's go live now to Katherine Schweit, a former senior FBI agent and professor on the Second Amendment at DePaul University College of Law. Thank you so much for being with us. When you look at the investigation, the potential investigation in Minneapolis, what are the big issues that you see presenting themselves?
Yeah, I think I can probably speak for a lot of former and current law enforcement, whether federal or state, to say that since these operations began, we've been holding our breath, remembering in 1970 in Ohio at Kent State University, when really inexperienced and undisciplined National Guard members murdered 4 protesters who were there protesting the Vietnam War. And now we've waited, and now it's happened again, right? It's just what we were afraid of. And honestly, I can say that if this was a question that I would give to my law school students on whether this was permissible use of force, deadly force, I think every one of them would clearly answer no.
Yeah, you're referring there to a major turning point in U.S. history, but just talk us through what you mean if you were to put that, rhetorically to your law students. Why would they say this was not a justified use of force?
Use of force, deadly force, as is permissible under the federal rules and regulations, federal officers, including ICE, is whether or not deadly force is permissible if you believe that if there are no reasonable alternatives and you believe that your life or another person's life is in danger. And in this case, we had a situation, which is what I would explain to the students, and they would say to me, I'd say, why would this be the situation? And they would parrot back to me what they've seen. They'd say, well, clearly the subject who was killed wasn't near his gun, wasn't reaching for his gun, and the video certainly that we have available to us is that the subject's gun was actually taken off of his person and carried from the scene, and then he was shot multiple times. So there was no threat to the officers involved.
Now, understandably, emotions are running really high in Minneapolis, and we've had federal authorities calling for calm and calling for the results of an investigation before people jump to conclusions. When you have videos of an incident like this going around, how does that complicate authorities' work?
I think we haven't dealt with this, right, until kind of George Floyd, which was another person who was murdered by a police officer. And that situation became one more situation after another, where we started to see the video collections. And the reality is that social media and everybody is an amateur journalist now, carrying those videos. And even when I was in the FBI and we were working the Boston bombing, for instance, after the Boston Marathon, we looked to those videos and gather and ask the public to provide those so that investigators who are doing a fair investigation, they look at all the evidence available to draw all the conclusions. And I think that what I'm afraid of right now is that we're not really hearing or seeing that. There's not a call for evidence that other people might have, witnesses. And I'm sure they're doing some, but I think a fair investigation, including a civil rights investigation that should be done by the Department of Justice, there's no indication that's happening right now.
Yeah, tell us when that would typically come into play, and why do you think that we're not seeing it this time around?
Well, why we're not seeing it, I think you'd have to ask the playmakers in Washington, D.C. But what we should be seeing right from the scene is you have when a person is killed locally in the United States, that is a state crime, and local law enforcement who contains that jurisdiction, in this case, Minneapolis police themselves, and the state's attorneys, the local state's attorneys there, would be key and leading an investigation. But hand in hand in this case is where guns are fired by federal officials. The federal officials, generally always the FBI, is the agency that investigates that, because this isn't really ICE's jurisdiction to investigate murders that occur or civil rights investigations, the FBI has that general charge. So when we don't see the right players on the ground, we don't see executives from the FBI, local FBI evidence collectors come in to collect the evidence for an independent and fair investigation. Whether one is going to be done, I think we'll just have to hope for the best. But I'm a little pessimistic about that right now, because even the local officials are not engaging and asked to be engaged in an investigation of a murder in their own state.
Katherine Schweit, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us as a former senior FBI agent. We do really appreciate your time this evening. Now, a new